This is the Hot Take Hockey Podcast with your hosts, Lucas and John Viveiros.
Hey everyone, it's John here from Hot Take Hockey, back with another podcast here with the legend, Lucas Viveiros. So episode 4 now. And honestly, I can't believe we're here. We had the intro episode, which counted as our first, then the Versteeg, then Canucks. Now we're at episode 4, and we got a huge guest. And I want to give big respects right off the bat, right at the start of the pod, to Lucas, because a huge interview with Kasimir Kaskisuo. I'm sure you guys know him from YouTube. He does a lot of vlogs, professional hockey player, played for the Leafs, played for the Preds, plays overseas with Sweden. Lucas, right off the bat, are you excited about this episode? You did a solo interview for this one, and obviously just a few other topics going into the season.
Yeah, it was an awesome interview with him. I know Kasimir Kaskisuo. I shot him a message a few years ago when he first signed his deal in 2016. We talked about it on the interview when he signed his first NHL deal with the Leafs. And it's cool how it all worked out. 6 years later, he's on an interview with myself. And it's great that you guys are going to get to hear it. He had 2 games of experience, like John was alluding to, with the Leafs and Nashville. And he's just a sweet guy, and he's doing some good stuff in the Swedish league and on YouTube, like you said, John.
Yeah, so I think just for myself, seeing his stuff on YouTube, like it's pretty cool that he's giving like the fans and the viewers like a big time behind the scenes. But obviously, you talk about that a lot in your interview. So yeah, guys, it was a pre-recorded interview. We're going to attach that towards the end of the pod, but we have a lot of good stuff coming on this podcast. We also have Off the Wall Hockey John coming on. Hopefully you guys have checked out his YouTube channel as well, so we'll have him on in a bit. But Lucas, just to quickly give our thoughts on some latest news in the NHL, just some signings. So let's go over a few of those.
Yeah, let's touch on JT Miller first. Obviously, we just missed him. We just missed talking about it on our Canucks episode there. He signed a handful of days later. Big deal, $8 million per 7 years. John, first reaction. I know you made a video on it, but just I'll hand it off to you and then I'll give my thoughts.
How many people like that make podcasts or like do like, whether it's like, I don't know, a show or whatever they like, I just see it all the time. Like you record something and then like a day later, or hours later, a couple days later, it just, so like we have this whole episode dedicated to like how the Canucks roster is shaping and like the difference on how it'll look between JT Miller being there and not, and then just it lost him. So I was able to kind of maneuver around that and still make the episode super relevant. But yeah, I mean, I think it's for the now, like I think it's huge for the Canucks. I still think like if you can shift through like having those 3 centers and the younger wingers that they brought in, while also maybe creating some cap space if it means moving Pearson, moving Myers, like the guys we talked about in that episode, then I think it's a really smart signing, at least for the now. I mean, I hate keep like making this, I guess, excuse, like keep on bringing it up, but I mean, the cap should go up. So I hate making that as a reasoning for like giving the money now, because like you're just hoping that, so it's relevant for all the teams and all the players that are signing. But I mean, for the now, the Canucks competing against 2 other Canadian teams in that Pacific Division with the Flames and Oilers, I think it's a really good signing for the now. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's the price it was going to be. We just saw what Kadri got. That's what it was going to be. But yeah, you give your thoughts, because obviously I've kind of already talked about it.
I think Kadri is like a really fascinating comparison, and we're going to see, since they're both in the same division, both on Canadian teams. Miller obviously gets $1 million more on the AAV, but Miller's a little bit younger. So it's going to be interesting to see which of those contracts emerges as the better one, because both of them are really, really important players in their top 6, in both teams' top 6. In Miller's case, I mean, he had that massive, in the 90s. Yeah, 99 points last year. So, and we talked about it on the last pod, but it is a very, very good piece of business for Vancouver in the now. And we'll see what happens in terms of, them fighting for a playoff spot in that Pacific Division. That's going to be wild all season long.
Yeah, talk about a big contract being thrown out. How about the Tage Thompson contract? Were you shocked? I mean, again, age and scenario, we know that, well, at least I know that you followed the Blues a lot over the last few years, and seeing how the Blues just snagged Ryan O'Reilly, and that it looked like the biggest finesse ever. But even I had said back then, I was like, keep an eye on this Tage Thompson guy. Not thinking, I'm not going to try to say that I was thinking Tage Thompson would go off the way he did last year. Not even close to that. But I thought he'd maybe be kind of that diamond in the rough in that trade. I guess, yeah. What do you think about Tage Thompson? And do you think like now he'll be actually that decent return from that trade and like stay consistent? Because they're taking a huge, like they're making a huge bet here.
Yeah, it's a massive bet. It's a year early, them doing that deal. But they're obviously hoping, Buffalo's hoping that Tage Thompson is gonna, exceed that 38 goals that he got last year, and this I think it was 66 points or something like that. So they think he's their first line center of the future. Time will tell, but as you were talking about with the O'Reilly trade, yeah, I mean, for St. Louis, they made out like bandits. They won the cup with O'Reilly. He was a Conn Smythe winner, but now Buffalo is seeing that return actually, turn into something. So that's great for them. But as far as the deal, I guess we're gonna have to see this year what
it's
he turns
so
into,
risky,
right?
man. I honestly,
it's a big risk.
I was defending it a little bit in the sense that it's like 6'7" center guy that like right shot, absolute just tank when he wants to be, scoring machine, at least what we saw last year. So at the end of the day, if he continues that, it's going to be a steal of a deal. If he continues that though, like that's the biggest thing for me is you're seeing the same franchise. Again, Skinner, different age and like different scenario, because I feel like Tage Thompson has consistently got better every year, where Skinner was like, he had the one-off year. And again, Skinner actually, he played really well last year. I mean, I think he scored like in around 32, right?
Yeah. So Skinner and Tuck and Tage Thompson turned out to be a really good line as the year was
really
going
good
on.
line for sure. So I'm not doubting the fact that like it's probably going to be a good scenario for the Sabres long-term. But my problem is, and again, I hate relating everything back to the Leafs, but when you hand out these contracts, and then the younger players the Sabres will have coming, whether it's Dylan Cousins, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, if they finish low in the standings, whoever they draft, like my point on that is this will catch up potentially in a bad way, but it's a good bet, I think, if he can continue what he did.
Well, if he's scoring over 35 goals, I think it's money in the bank.
Oh, even if he's scoring over 30
goals,
like
30. But
exactly.
But John, you got to think like, again, don't want to bring it back to the Leafs, but just to jump on your point there, they did this a year early before he might command 8 or 8.5, right? Or 9 if he was to score 45 goals this year or something crazy. I mean, I wouldn't be thinking that's what's going to happen, but they wanted to get ahead of the business and do it. Obviously, there's a lot of teams that wish they did that in hindsight, that left it to the very end of the ELC, and then they got to pay 10, 11 million. So it could turn out to be smart business. Right now, it's a bit of an overpay, but I mean, we'll see where it turns into.
And just a couple depth ones. Evgeny Svechnikov for the Sharks, and then they're retaining the guy Brandstrom. I think a lot of Senators fans were a little concerned about that situation, and obviously they're still trying to like figure out that defense situation. But Brandstrom at $900K, like there's no risk there at all.
It's a great deal.
It's a completely prove it deal, and I think that's the same thing with like Svechnikov for the Sharks, like $750K, like that's a couple of no risk deals. It kind of sucks seeing like, well, for Evgeny Svechnikov, he's got that Svechnikov last name, and he's not really close to his brother, but. I mean, did you want to touch on one of them? Kind of your thoughts? I mean, obviously, just more relevant with Brandstrom with the Sens, like that defense is a little crowded there. I mean, we'll see if he gets a shot.
Yeah, I mean, he'll be behind as a lefty. He's going to be behind Shabbat. He's going to be behind maybe Sanderson. So, it's getting to the point with Brandstrom where it's like he's got to prove that he's going to stick with Ottawa. I mean, it feels like it's been, writing on the wall that he was going to get traded for a few years now. So we'll see what he kind of turns to and what opportunity he gets with Ottawa. Ottawa's obviously going to be a lot better this year, or they hope to be. So hopefully he's a key cog there. As far as Svechnikov goes, with
Is he a guy that just ends up getting traded at the deadline?
Yeah, that's what I think he's going to turn into. I think San Jose, they are not really challenging for much this year with their squad. So I think that what's going to end up happening is these guys on the last year of their deal are probably going to get moved on as we get to the deadline and flip for assets. Because I think the Sharks could be, close to the Bedard sweepstakes by the end of the year. That's my little take.
Ooh,
yeah.
I mean, I kind of said, I wouldn't mind that at all. I've always had a soft spot for the Sharks. I wouldn't mind seeing Bedard in a Sharks jersey. I'd prefer that much more than the other alternatives, if I'm being honest.
Yes. Not naming names on any other teams.
So just to go over some recent trade chat. So we've talked about a lot of teams targeting defensemen. Two teams out there right now are the Canucks and the Kings. I did want to touch on that just because we've been talking a lot about the Pacific Division. So look out for that. I do know there's kind of the conversations with the Calgary Flames and being crowded in that sense. So hopefully when you're watching this pod, that conversation is still relevant. But a couple other conversations. The Rangers, younger guys in Niels Lundqvist and Kravtsov. The Habs have been connected to those guys. So we'll see if something comes up of that. I know some people have thrown out like some scenarios where whether it's like a Höglander with the Canucks or like, as I just said, Niels Lundqvist with the Rangers, a right shot defenseman. I saw a Rangers fan actually at me on Twitter, and he said, he asked me if I would be down for a Sandin for Niels Lundqvist 1-for-1. Sandin the left shot, Niels Lundqvist the right shot. If you just move out Hall, then Lundqvist could be on the bottom pair with Giordano. I don't hate the idea. I mean, it just depends on like Sandin and like, I don't know what this guy thinks. He just watched Branstrom get 900K. So obviously there's not much leverage at this point. So we'll see what happens out of that. And then the only other thing, and Lucas, I wanted your thoughts just on kind of all of this is, Ken, we've talked about it, and there's just a lot of conversations about the Jets. And like, obviously people have talked about Scheifele, and he went on an interview with Sarah Orlesky, and then obviously all the Pierre-Luc Dubois conversation, but everyone just keeps forgetting about Blake Wheeler, and like a couple years left, over $8 million per year. Would he want to go back to the U.S.? The one scenario I actually saw in an article, and I've seen it on Cat Friendly a couple of times, is like Blake Wheeler to the Florida Panthers and seeing a Patrick Hornquist, that dump, go the other way. So if the Jets were to retain a couple million off of Blake Wheeler, and apparently the Panthers have been trying to get rid of the Hornquist contract, the cap would match up pretty well. And then I've also seen the hot take of Blake Wheeler returning to the Boston Bruins with a couple bad contracts of the likes of like a Foligno and Forbert going the other way. Because I mean, again, like the Foligno contract, three and a bit, Forbert 3 and a bit, that would match up. But again, I think the Jets would have to retain at least a couple million, maybe even close to 3 million on the cap. So Lucas, based on just everything I've talked about, I mean, I would say more so, I think the Blake Wheeler one's the most interesting. That's why I kind of finished it off there. On that conversation, do you think the Jets might blow things up this year, or blow things up coming up, and Blake Wheeler being a part of that?
With the Jets, there's such a tough one to always predict.
Such a mystery.
Every year, John, it's like, are they going to make the playoffs? And then they make noise sometimes. Are they just going to be kind of irrelevant by, January, February? Blake Wheeler, it's always sad to me when you see like a captain of a team, he's approaching, father time's catching up, and he gets moved on, after all these years, and doesn't get the flowers, that he kind of deserves for being the captain there for a while. But I think that Blake Wheeler, obviously, if the Jets aren't in, a serious playoff chase by the deadline, obviously it'll be on the table. I don't know if it'll be prior to the season, and I'm knocking on wood because I was saying that with JT Miller, and then he signed. But but Blake Wheeler, obviously, like you said, there'll have to be retention, and I don't really know, how much value he brings as far as, points go anymore. He
in the second half of last year, he still racked them up towards the end too. So I don't know.
And obviously the foot speed has always been a bit of an issue with Blake Wheeler, but I could see him on a team like Boston. That seems like a good fit, and obviously that's where he started. So that seems like a good story there. I wanted to touch on the Rangers bit of info there as well, because the Rangers, it always seems like they hit really hard or they miss really hard on their young players. And, we're going to see it with Lafreniere this year, if he can really step in
and Kakko
and Kakko. I mean, Kakko, I'm a little less high on just lately. Lafreniere, I know as the playoffs went on, he got a couple big goals, and it's going to be interesting to see. He's going to get elevated ice time with Vetrano leaving, with Kopp leaving, right? So,
and I'm just going to spoil right now. We're talking about breakout players in this episode. Yeah. I'm so tired of seeing the Lafreniere disrespect. When this guy goes off, I'll be laughing.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to touch on them, because I feel like with the two players you mentioned, like are
Niels
they
Lundqvist and Kravtsov?
Niels Lundqvist, yes. Are they going to have an opportunity there? Are they going to be given a few weeks or a few games to prove themselves, and then all of a sudden it's pulled underneath them? I mean, time will tell. But with the Rangers, it's always fascinating to see either their young players really succeed, like a Fox, or you see like a Kakko thus far. I don't want to write his script for this year. Maybe he breaks out, but they're always a fun team to watch with their young players.
Yeah, I think there's I think we say it every year, but I'd like to think there's a lot of just great storylines going into this year. And obviously I think coming out of this off season, just like huge movement with a lot of teams and obviously big names moved around. So we're going to bring on off the wall hockey, talk about some breakout players, talk about some goalie tandems, some goalies to look out for this year. And just honestly have a conversation about overall some NHL names to look out for the 2022-2023 season. So let's bring on John from Off the Wall Hockey. Welcome back to the Hot Take Hockey podcast. I'm John here with Lucas and another legend, John from Off the Wall Hockey. Thank you so much for coming on, bro. Guys, everyone watching, make sure you go subscribe to Off the Wall Hockey on YouTube, link in the description. John, just before we get into our topics, how are you feeling about, I know you're going to be doing a lot of stuff in your channel, but just going into the new season, how are you feeling about everything hockey and NHL?
Oh man, I'm so pumped. I'm so ready for hockey to be back. I feel like this offseason's felt pretty long for me, so I just can't wait to get back into it. Really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, man. Honestly, thank you for coming on. And so we're going to jump right into talking about some goalies. And we've kind of already mentioned that we're having Kaskisuo up here on this episode. So kind of a goalie topic here, talking about some goalie tandems and a goalie kind of breakout conversation. So John, well, you're the guest. We'll shoot it to you first on one goalie you might want to talk about. Who's a goalie that everyone should look out for this year?
Oh man, Thatcher Demko up in Vancouver. I'm so high on him. Loved watching him in college and just the way that his career's gone to this point. I think he's a guy that, because the Canucks had a tough year last year, kind of was overlooked and wasn't really talked about, but he single-handedly was winning Vancouver games at points last season. And I think he's a guy that if you get the team in front of him playing a little bit better, especially defensively, he could be one of those guys that jumps up into the conversation of being a top 10, top 7, maybe even top 5 goaltender potentially in this league with that, adequate play in front of him. And I just think he's a guy that has a chance to put up some really big numbers this season.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We finished a Canucks podcast and a lot of our conversations were about Thatcher Demko. And honestly, I see some like goalie lists online or whatever it is, and I'm still like seeing Demko out of like even like the top 7 for some people. I'm just like, what is going on here? Like, I can understand seeing maybe goalies have success in the playoffs recently and kind of tether towards those guys. But watching Demko game to game and even seeing if Demko even goes to 80% of what he did in that bubble, this guy's going to be a top 3, top 5 goalie in the league for the next 5 years. And I know, Lucas, you alluded to, you talked about it as well. Like,
I couldn't agree more.
You think is so unreal.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, John hit it on the head too when he's saying Thatcher Demko last year won Vancouver games on his own. I remember one game last year, it was versus Toronto. It was at Scotiabank Arena, and Thatcher Demko stood on his head in that third period and won the Canucks the game. So I watched a handful of Canucks games where he did that last year, and I agree wholeheartedly. I think he's going to be dominant this year.
Lucas, you got a goalie on your list there?
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to stick with the St. Louis Blues theme that we were talking about before we hopped on the show. And I'm going to go with Jordan Binnington. I think he's rebounding this year. He had the pressure from Ville Husso last year, and he did lose his job. But I think this year he has got more of a backup behind him now with Thomas Greiss. And I think the Blues, they've revamped their core, and they now have Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, these guys really stepping into bigger roles. And I think the Blues overall are a better team. And I think you're going to see that in Jordan Binnington's win total. Defensively, they've always been a pretty strong team. So I see him rebounding and seeing those save percentage, goals against, all the goalie stats going up for him, as opposed to last year where it was probably his worst career season. What about you, John?
I was going to say, this whole conversation connects here. It's like John here on the chat, not to rub it in any sense, but John here, a Bruins fan. We're talking about Binnington beat the Bruins.
Oh, yeah.
Then connecting, John talks about Demko. Demko smacked the Blues in the playoffs in the bubble. And now I'm going to continue the Blues conversation a little bit. A former Blue here. And not to say that I think this tandem is going to be absolutely unreal, but I'm so fascinated by how this tandem will do. And it's the Red Wings tandem. Looking at Ville Husso and Nedeljkovic. I think it's so fascinating because you look at what you just said about Husso is like, he's a guy that was like the 1B situation. Then he kind of broke out in some games, then struggled late. Like my only concern, and I feel like this is just a funny name, but like I kind of revert it back to like what Carolina was hoping in Scott Darling. Like I hope Ville Husso is not the Scott Darling effect. Like I want him to be like the successful story, like not like one of those Darling stories. So I think whether it's Husso or Nedeljkovic, I think they'll give each other healthy competition. Nedeljkovic, I think even talking to a couple of Red Wings fans, I was talking to my buddy today about it, is like Nedeljkovic in some games showed that he could be so dominant. And just, they're both behind like such a weak, I still call it a weak Red Wings defense because the only significant move they made was overpaying for Ben Sherratt. So at the end of the day, if one of those goalies can go off and give each other healthy competition, I'm really fascinated by that tandem. And then, I mean, John, you're in an Atlantic Division, like you're a fan of an Atlantic Division team as well. Like this Atlantic Division got so competitive so fast. It's insane.
Yeah, it's going to be nuts.
Yeah, and I was just going to quickly, I know you were talking about another goalie, not in the Eastern Conference, and the other conference, and was just in the news lately. Who's your other goalie to talk about?
Yeah, Jake Ottinger down in Dallas just got a fresh new contract, a contract that I think is an absolute steal for him because he's another one of these young up-and-coming guys that I think has potential Vezina possibilities in the future. And the way that he played in the playoff series last year against Calgary in the first round, I think even though they lost that series, was kind of the coming out party on a more broad scale for Jake Ottinger for how good of a goaltender that he is. But I think this has been coming with Ottinger, and he's a guy that I think similar to Demko is going to work himself up into that top 10, top 7, top 5 category of goaltender and potentially has a Vezina trophy in his future if he continues on this path.
Man, what he showed in that Flames series, like they're not even touching, like I don't even know if they're touching 5 games in that series without Ottinger.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, that was nuts.
He almost won the series like by himself.
Like Johnny Gaudreau had to literally like slice that right into the absolute top corner off the weirdest angle ever to beat Ottinger. Like that's what it took to beat him in Game 7 overtime. So Lucas, sliding it back to you. Do you have another goalie in mind?
I got one that I'm so fascinated by, and I was last year as well. And you know what? It didn't come to fruition like I thought it was, and that's Spencer Knight down in Florida. Is this the year Spencer Knight is going to get the keys and get more games? I don't know the answer to it, but eventually you have to think that's what's going to happen here in Florida. Bobrovsky is getting a little bit long in the tooth, and we know on the big contract that he's on, he had a decent season last year, but you got to start giving some games to Spencer Knight. He's got the talent. He's got a great team there. Let's see him get, a good chunk of 40 games. I would think, start splitting the season in half between the two at least. I'm really high on this guy, and I think that if the Panthers go with him, I think that they will once again be one of the best teams in the Atlantic Division.
And honestly, I think it's so interesting with the Bobrovsky situation because it's like the Panthers, like even like how rumors have kind of slipped in on like them trying to offload that contract. Like obviously that's like to give the full reins to Spencer Knight and give him that confidence. Kind of what you talked about with certain goalies. Like obviously healthy competition works in some scenarios, but some goalies, they really battle with having that like lingering behind them, having another goalie right there and having that pressure. It just doesn't work with some goalies. So I do want to just kind of discuss 2 really interesting scenarios. One being more on a successful situation in Colorado, Georgiev and Francouz. I think that one's really interesting. And I think obviously a really successful season team. And Lucas, I think you're a little nervous on me bringing this up, but little 2-time cup champ and Matt Murray with Samsonov. So I think these 2 are the biggest question mark tandems in terms of being on good teams, at least two good season teams, and Colorado being obviously the team that's just coming off a cup. So John, I kind of want to just throw it to you. Obviously, you can throw a little Leafs hate in here, but just off those 2 tandems being like huge question marks, I'm kind of, because Lucas and I, maybe a little Leafs glasses on or something. But you can talk about the Colorado one first, but do you have doubt in both these tandems? Because they're huge question mark tandems. I mean, Georgiev could be a breakout guy, and maybe Samsonov bounces back. But what are your kind of thoughts on these tandems?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Teams that are expected to do so well and are high level hockey teams going in with goaltending being the question, with it being what I believe the most important position in hockey. And for Colorado, I think Georgiev has shown some flashes that he can be a really solid goaltender, and obviously was never going to get that chance with Shesterkin being already an elite guy with the Rangers. So, and I think that, Francouz has had enough of experience there as the backup where he's a really solid guy to be that 1B type guy where Georgiev can kind of lean on him a little bit if he needs to. So they also have just elite, ridiculous team in front of them. So I'm not as worried about it with Colorado just because that team is so good. And I've seen the flashes with those. Toronto, I think, is a bit more of a question mark to me just because Samsonov had all this hype about him coming up with Washington and never lived up to it. Like at no point during Samsonov's tenure with the Capitals after that first year was I like, this guy's a franchise goalie or this guy's the future starter taking the reins. He never took that next step to grab that opportunity and run with it. And that has me a little bit worried. And then Matt Murray, I mean, just you don't see careers like this very often where this guy comes in as a cup winner right away, looks like, an immediate replacement for Marc-Andre Fleury and this future superstar. And it's just all downhill from there. I think Murray has some bounce back ability just because, we saw it a little bit with Ottawa where, last season there were some stretches where he actually played pretty well. Yeah. Didn't have a great team in front of him. Obviously, Ottawa might be quite a bit better this year, should be quite a bit better this year. But I think, there's still some potential there. But honestly, I think Samsonov might be the guy that might come out and kind of take the reins a little bit and be like, okay, this is the opportunity where he's going to grab it. This is the potential that we saw early in his Capitals career. But that's definitely a question mark that you're hoping that the Leafs can score enough goals. And with that offense, they might be able to kind of take some of the pressure off of that goaltending.
Man, and I'll say, and I know, Lucas, you're telling me offline, you're staying away from those two Leaf guys in fantasy.
I don't know.
Definitely.
I don't know, man.
if someone was like pressuring you to pick between one of them in a fantasy situation or a successful situation, do you have like a little bit of instinct on it?
I wish I could go against John and start a bit of a debate right now, but I'm also slightly on the Samsonov side. I think that the potential that he hasn't shown yet. I think everyone's waiting for him to finally put the pieces together. So I would slightly go towards him. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to almost end up being a split. If there wasn't injuries, as long as there's no big injuries that take place. And when playoffs roll around, it's just whoever's the hotter guy at that time. I think for Toronto.
Yeah. Don't worry, Matt Murray. If you're watching this video, I believe in you. All right. Anyways, the last guy I want to throw in just to quickly just us kind of transition into the breakout player conversation is making a statement here. It's pretty clear. Sorokin will be the make or break for the Islanders. I just wanted to add in that in terms of goalie conversation. Islanders are so like on the borderline. They did nothing. And Sorokin, I feel like we just talked about Demko and Ottinger here with John. Sorokin's that guy for me too, where it's like he could jump into that top 5 category very quickly. If he does like what we've seen with like Demko with the Canucks or Ottinger with the Stars, he could be that guy that carries the Islanders a bit. So I do want to transition to the breakout conversation. We've been talking a lot about the Atlantic Division. So John, I'll throw it back to you. Do you have a couple breakout players in that Atlantic Division we should look out for?
Immediate one that comes to mind for me is Jake Sanderson with the Ottawa Senators. I mean, that's a team that if there's anywhere left that you're looking that, might be a little weaker, it's the blue line. And now they've got Sanderson coming in. And the potential he has, I think, to be a lockdown top pair guy is phenomenal. And I don't think Moritz Seider set such a high bar last year as a first-year rookie coming in and immediately being a number one defenseman. I don't think Sanderson's going to have that offense in him, at least not right away. But I think from a defensive standpoint and being a little bit more of a rock back there for them defensively, they've got Thomas Chabot to put up, 50, 60 points and play the power play and put up the points. They need that defensive guy. I think Sanderson has the tools to come in and be a lockdown defensive player for Ottawa, significantly improve that blue line right away. And then we know the moves they've made up front. I mean, this is a team that's starting to get really dangerous.
Yeah, honestly, I think if Sanderson's given the right opportunity, obviously if he's healthy, then I think he could be, like I said, that pressure, or like you said, the pressure off, and maybe he kind of gets some good looks this year. Lucas, you got one in the Atlantic?
Okay, well, you guys got to check me and tell me if this counts as a breakout player. But I would go, I'm going to go with Cole Caulfield because I think at the end of last year, first of all, is that valid as a breakout player?
I think that's valid.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I think last year was the year everyone was expecting him to really blossom and break out. But obviously at the start of the year with Ducharme, the way he was utilizing him, and then going down to the minors, Caulfield, was stuck on one goal for a while. You really saw what he could turn into at the end of the season. And although Montreal doesn't have the strongest team, I think he's going to be a huge bright spot for a pretty poor team that they are as of right now. And I can see him, getting near that 30 goal mark, if not exceeding it. Because I think when Montreal starts to really get good and get out of this rebuild, he's a slam dunk 30, 35 goal scorer every year, if not more. He's got that shot and that skill to do so.
Yeah, honestly, I like the take. I think Montreal, this is kind of my dilemma with Montreal. I understand everyone wants to just place them at the bottom of the Atlantic Division, but if you have some of these young guys really showing well this year, and they have a lot of the their character guys from the Stanley Cup final run. So I'm just saying don't be surprised if Montreal's not in the basement because again, I think that Atlantic Division is so unpredictable. And talk about the Atlantic Division, just to name a couple, obviously I think everyone's going to have their eyes on Owen Power this year, but in terms of a guy that could actually, I think, finally break out, if he maybe gets that role, obviously I think they'll probably try to run back the Tage Thompson, Skinner and Tuck line, but I think Dylan Cousins could break out. I think Dylan Cousins could be a really intriguing name. So I wanted to put that name out there. And I'm not to say that he's going to break out yet, but I just keep an eye on Luukkonen. I think if Comrie, Luukkonen, that situation is interesting to me. So my guy for Buffalo is definitely Dylan Cousins. That would be kind of my hot take for a breakout player. And I do think Buffalo, I mean, it's kind of funny. I feel like a year ago we were laughing at the Sabres, but I wouldn't laugh at them anymore, especially if they can get another top 3 or top 5 pick in the upcoming draft. I think they're gonna have a future, man, a crazy future. So just kind of transitioning to another Eastern Conference division here. John, do you have one in the Metro that people should look out for that could absolutely just break out this year?
Kent Johnson. I mean, Columbus is making moves. I mean, they went out, they got Johnny Gaudreau. Cole Sillinger looked pretty good last year as a rookie, and I think he's going to continue to get better. They were able to re-sign Patrick Laine. I think that Laine and Gaudreau together is going to be dynamic. Then you've got Kent Johnson, who is, a smaller player, really shifty, really good hands. We saw, the incredible playmaking and scoring ability in World Juniors. We saw what he did at the University of Michigan on that loaded team. He racked up points there. This is a guy that, got a little bit of a taste at the end of last year, but assuming that he's going to get a full NHL season this year, I think we could see some serious point totals out of him. And Columbus has quite a few young guys that I feel like their young core is a little bit under the radar because it's Columbus and nobody really talks about the Blue Jackets. They've got a lot of young players, Johnson, I think, being one of them that has high potential and could really start making that team look a lot better than what we've seen the past couple of years.
Man, I mean, I fully agree. I think the Jackets are definitely overlooked. I mean, Kent Johnson coming off that World Junior game-winning goal. I hope we see a big year out of him. Lucas, you got one in the Metro?
I actually had Kent Johnson on my list, but my one in the Metro that I think people are sleeping on a little bit is Sammy Blais of the Rangers. Obviously, he didn't play a lot last year, He was injured last year, so he missed the season, and he came back in that Buchnevich trade, which does not look good for the Rangers whatsoever. But I think Sammy Blais is going to have probably a career year for himself. Listen, this guy, I don't think he scored more than 30 points in a season. And if he has, I think it was maybe one time he got around that 30-point mark. I think with the opportunity he's going to get on the wing in New York, with Vetrano leaving, with Kopp leaving, with this uncertainty again on Kakko and Lafreniere, I can see Sammy Blais getting some top six time, and also playing with Philip Hedl and maybe a little connection there. So let's throw that one out there, Sammy Blais.
Man, I like this Blues trend from Lucas over here. I like where it's going. And yeah, I mean, you know what? Sammy Blais, I feel like it's probably a mix of like a breakout slash, like kind of what you said. He hasn't really had the production, so I don't know if you could even categorize him as a bounce back, but like I guess off the injury, a bounce back and then maybe breaking out. I feel like he was showing signs, and I think with his frame, he could show something. For me, another New York team, and I think when we talk about bounce back, we'll probably do it in another episode, but Barzal's got to bounce back. But the breakout guy on the Islanders is Oliver Wahlstrom. Like I think with Barry Trotz gone, I think let Wahlstrom free, please. Let him absolutely go nuts. I think this guy's going to, honestly, if I could throw a hot take on this episode right now, I think Wahlstrom's going to put 25 plus in the big game. I think Wahlstrom is just going to go crazy. So Wahlstrom would be probably my take for breakout. I am wearing Carolina, so I also have to talk about this guy because it's like, we have to just circle back to the Leafs connection here. When the Leafs decided to trade a first-round pick to get rid of the Marleau contract, and the Carolina Hurricanes decided to draft a guy named Seth Jarvis, I think Jarvis is going to be freaking nasty this year. He showed sides of it last year. So two guys in the Metro Division that I think two right shot guys, two guys that are probably going to be so gross this year, Seth Jarvis and Oliver Wahlstrom are my two. Let's go to the Central Division. John, do you got one in the Central?
Oh man, Central. My immediate look is to the Minnesota Wild, and I wonder, is this finally the year for Marco Rossi? Like they need
Rossi
that
Minnesota.
They need that center depth. They need a young, talented center to break out and come into that lineup. And we're waiting on Rossi. Obviously, he's had some setbacks already early in his career. He had the COVID issues, he had the injury issues, but it's like we're waiting for him to bust through. He played a couple games last year, but didn't really show out, didn't go all that well, but he had a good year in the AHL. I'm going to be watching him super close in the preseason and training camp, because I think if he can earn himself a roster spot, he could jump up and play a really big offensive role with this team really early on, just because you look at that, the way Minnesota is composed. I mean, I love the Wild. They've got a lot of hard workers. They've got a lot of real gritty, tough, do everything for their teammates kind of guys, but they're outside of Kaprizov, and Boldy's really coming into his own now. They're missing that high end talent. And I think Rossi has that high end talent. It's just, is that NHL ready yet? But he's got a chance to really put up some numbers when he is NHL ready for that team.
Man, I think you're right, like on it there, because I just think if there was a time for Rossi to really see, even like, I'm not saying that like the Wild are going to be a playoff team or not a playoff team. I think they're going to be kind of on the border there. So we'll see what they do with like a guy like Freddie Gaudreau, but Rossi will get an opportunity at the middle at some point over the next year or two. And like once he does, I would imagine he has a chance to break out. Lucas, if you don't say Perunovich for the Blues here, I'm going to be really disappointed.
I'm going to steer wide of Perunovich. I think he's going to be really good. But listen, I feel like when we talk about breakout players, it's always about the opportunity that they're getting. Like we've talked about with Sillinger, Kent Johnson, they like we talked about with Rossi here. It's not just do they have the skill to blossom? It's do they get the opportunity? And as far as my pick for Colorado, it's a Colorado Avalanche player. I think his come out was really in the playoffs last year, but I think Arturi Lehkonen is going to be a top six staple all year. And with Kadri leaving, it opens up, some room for him to stay in that top six. And I noticed Colorado last year, they got away from that Landeskog, Rantanen, and McKinnon line and started to balance themselves a little more. I can see Lehkonen playing with McKinnon quite a bit throughout the season, 5-on-5, and also being on that power play in Kadri's spot. So I think he's going to shatter his point totals as far as a career season, because his career high in points is 31. Arturi Lehkonen. Keep an eye on this guy in Colorado.
Man, I love that pick, Lucas. Because you know what, I feel like when we talk about breakout players, it's like we always want to talk about the younger guys. So I actually love that you're taking it that way, because I think what you said, like Burakovsky gone, Kadri gone, Lehkonen showed a little bit more of that offense, and like he's going back-to-back years of scoring like huge goals in the playoffs, like in like flips that are just going to be all like around for a while. So man, I like it. I think like if Lehkonen was on a line with like Nate for a bit, like this guy could probably put up like 50, 60 points maybe. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I got a couple of names here, and it's a guy that's been lurking, always been really underrated. And my hot take would be Philip Tomasino with the Nashville Predators. I think even like a guy like Tolvanen with Nashville is always really intriguing to me. But Tomasino, if I had to throw just a sprinkle another name in there, I'm really intrigued by Cole Perfetti in Winnipeg. But Tomasino is my hot take, and I do think what we saw from Tomasino with Team Canada, what we saw from Tomasino in certain spurts with Nashville in the bottom six, I think just give this guy power play time, give this guy a chance in the top nine. I love Tomasino, so that'd be my pick in the Central. John, do you got one in the Pacific Division?
I'll spoil this right now. My rookie of the year pick right now, Matty Beniers.
You got mine. You got mine, Johnny. There he is.
I honestly think we could see 70+ points from Matty Beniers this year.
Oh,
like,
I love it.
He had 9 points in 10 games in his little cup of coffee at the end of last year. He's probably going to step right in to be their number one center. Incredible two-way player already at a very young age, which a lot of times the defensive side of the game takes a little bit to learn and get to that level. This guy is a great two-way player right from the get-go. Incredible. Another Michigan guy coming from that loaded Michigan team in college last year and the last couple years. And I just, with the opportunity that he's going to have, with the added goal scorers that Seattle has added this offseason, trading for Bjorkstrand, bringing in Burakovsky, you know, McCann had a good year last year. The opportunity is there for him to just rip it up. He's going to get power play time. He's probably going to be playing with great goal scorers in the top 6 on 5-on-5. Like I have such high hopes and high expectations for what Matty Beniers can do this year. I honestly could see him 70+ points in rookie of the year.
I love that pick.
I love it. I love the take. I absolutely love the take. Lucas,
all right,
you got it stolen. You got to adjust here.
On the fly. All right. I picked forwards up to this point. I'm going to go with the defenseman, Evan Bouchard in Edmonton. He is going to get so much ice time up there. And you know, right hand shot. He's going to get so many minutes. I think that
43 points last year for Bouchard. You're going to say he's going to add 20 to that or what?
He is going to well exceed that 43. 100%. He's in the mid 50s. I'm telling you right now, Evan Bouchard, book it. That's my pick.
Oh my, Raybro's going to love you for that. Anyways, yeah, I honestly, I had that on my mind, but talk about another right shot defenseman for the Ducks, and he's going to be one of my favorite players to watch. I already know it. Jamie Drysdale. Ooh. Everyone's going to talk about McTavish this year. Everyone's going to talk about Zegras. Throw some respect on my guy Drysdale. He's going to go off on that right side. So Drysdale's my pick. As we're closing out here, and we're going to bring on our interview here with Kaskisuo, I do want to say, because Lucas, we talked about it earlier, I really hope, I know Lafreniere's in the Metro here, but the Lafreniere Byfield, like we didn't talk about Stützle, but I feel like everyone's saying Stützle's going to break out. So like, I think Stützle's going to break out. I think we can all agree probably Stützle's going to go off this year, especially if he's playing with Drew and DeBrincat. So to me, I don't think that's much of a hot take at all. We're on Hot Take Hockey here. That's an obvious take. Byfield and Lafreniere, please. I want to see both those guys just absolutely go off this year. So I had to add those two guys into the conversation because I do want to see those guys go off. I think Byfield could be a big part of LA up the middle, being really dangerous. And I think if Lafreniere, kind of what you talked about with like guys like Sammy Blais, Kravtsov, closing out that maybe top 9 for the Rangers, Kakko, Lafreniere, like I saw Lafreniere get physical in that playoffs, and I'm like, man, if this guy can have an overall game, like he is going to be electric. And I always refer it back to the Johnny Huberdeau effect. Huberdeau was an early pick for Florida, and he was always kind of like there, and he never broke out for a while. And then Huberdeau now is one of the best wingers in the game. So I'm always like, sometimes let's be patient. Let's be patient with Lafreniere, because I still think there's a lot there with Alexis Lafreniere. So John, man, you're an absolute freaking legend. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to be bringing on Kasimir Kaskisuo. But John, any last words? And what do you got coming up on the channel? Like, again, make sure you guys go subscribe to Off the Wall Hockey.
Oh man, just super pumped to get back into hockey. I'm going to be streaming a lot this year, doing as many games as I can. Actually, the rookie tournaments are starting to come up, and I might try and live stream during some of those this year, because I find those super interesting just with all the young players, and I feel like they're not really talked about a whole lot in the hockey world. Everyone's kind of waiting for the preseason, but it's like that week before, you've got all these rookies playing. So I'm going to try and cover those a little bit, and just really excited to get back into hockey and start watching games again, streaming games again, and just so excited for this season. I think it's going to be a great one.
Yeah, I feel that big time. All right, well, we got the legend here, John from Off the Wall Hockey, and Lucas, big time legendary moment, getting a solo interview with Kasimir Kaskisuo. So bring it to Lucas and Kasimir.
Welcome, everybody, to the Hot Take Hockey Podcast. I'd like to introduce a guest that we're very fortunate to have join us here today. He's a goaltender from Finland who currently plays overseas in the Swedish league with Leksands IF. This netminder also played in 2 NHL games with the Leafs and the Predators. Let's welcome Kasimir Kaskisuo to the show. How's it going, Kasimir? Where are you at right now?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, like you said, here in Leksand, Sweden. Been here just under a month and a couple more weeks until regular season kicks off. So it's full preparation.
Awesome. Good to hear. So I know our communication really started. I mean, we can go back to 2016, you know, as a Leafs fan growing up. I shot you a message when you got that first contract and that big breakthrough. And it was great to see you respond back to me back then. I really appreciate it. So let's start. Yeah.
Good to hear that I reply.
Yeah, you did. It was awesome. You know, this is what, 6 years ago now. So I was a little bit younger. It was great to see that response come back. Maybe let's just start there. And, you know, the emotion that went into, you know, the day of signing that first contract, and as well as just all the buildup of, you know, your career prior to getting that contract.
Yeah. Obviously, I left after 2 years of college at Minnesota Duluth, and I started off as pretty much a 21-year-old freshman, and at the time I signed, I think I was just turning 23, and felt like I had 2 good years of college hockey, and it was the time to you know, hopefully get an NHL deal and take the step to pro, and which is something I obviously dreamed of and worked my whole life for. And when nothing kind of happened until the season ended. In college, it kind of ends a little earlier than the pro. And just when the season's over, just kind of waiting with my agent, like what offers are and like what teams, and it sounded like the Leafs were the most interested. So and like the situation of the team at the time, when it was the season before they drafted Matthews, and a couple tough years.
Yeah, rebuilding years.
And obviously goaltending, you know, like they were revamping the whole system. So and obviously Toronto being a hockey town, so it was a pretty easy decision to jump aboard.
Awesome. I wanted to get into a bit of your like psychology, you know, as a goalie, and what drew you to the position, you know, as a kid. You know, my background, I played a bit of hockey growing up. I was a winger, so nothing like yourself, but my father, he was a goalie growing up, and he tried to put me into it. He strapped the pads on me at a young age, got shelled like 7 or 8 goals in a couple of games I played. Let's just get into that. I'm curious to what drew you to the position as a goaltender.
Yeah, it definitely can be mentally tough. Not for everyone, but I've seen some footage of myself at 2.5, 3 years old at skating school, like standing in front of the net on the old tape recorders, and so I guess ever since day one, it's been goaltending. And Finland won World Championships 95. I was born 93, and obviously the goalie is a big part of that. And I think it's just the equipment and the gear, and then I feel like it just fits for the Finnish mentality of just kind of being to yourself and being quiet and calm, and it just fits my personality perfect to be a goalie.
Got it. As far as when you were growing up and, you know, you got into that goalie position, Finland's known for producing great goaltenders over the years. One of my favorite goalies as a kid was Mika Kiprasov. I was curious, who were some of your, goalie idols growing up, if you followed the NHL, when you were growing up, and yeah, just goaltenders that you were drawn to, whether it be because of their style or just the swagger that they had on the ice, or, that sort of thing. What goaltenders were you drawn to?
Yeah, keeper was huge for me. I think we had a tournament in Ottawa when we're 10 years old, something like that. And I just had to get a Calgary jersey, and that's all because of Kipper. So followed him a lot for sure. And then obviously Pekkarinen too. And it was pretty cool to be with him on the same teammates in Nashville. But yeah, and then I think the biggest one always was Kari Lehtonen, who played for Atlanta and Dallas, and just kind of he came up from the same organization in Helsinki Jokerit that I did, and just kind of he won the championship in Finland when he was like 18 or 19, and obviously drafted second overall, and just always followed his career, and he was always kind of the number one guy for me.
Yeah, it's cool when you touch on like Kari Lehtonen. For me as a kid, I went to like quite a few Leaf games growing up. I was fortunate in that way, but for some reason I felt like I went to a lot of Leafs Thrashers games, and so I saw like Lehtonen live quite a bit, and then again the Leafs were going through a rebuilding time, so they were getting beat by Kovalchuk and that team back then. But so I want to touch on your Nashville experience as well. I've watched like quite a few of your vlogs on YouTube, and we can get into that later as well. I love your editing style and all of that. But as far as Nashville goes, that must have been awesome being with Rene, like you said, and learning from guys like him and Saros. And how do you look at your time in Nashville?
Yeah, 100%. Those guys, I mean, I only played 15 minutes the whole COVID season, being stuck in the Texas squad. But, just getting to show up to the rink every day and like hang out with those guys and learn from them and watch them, it made that whole experience pretty special and tolerable, because it could have been, it was pretty taxing at times. Just not playing and practicing early and all that stuff with the COVID restrictions. But that was obviously doubled my NHL games my time in Nashville, from 1 to 2. So I'm very thankful for that. But obviously just, more so what happened on the ice, it was more the off ice stuff, and, being in that environment with those guys.
Cool. I mean, I remember your Leaf start very well, because I follow that team pretty closely. And I remember I think it would have been the reason I remember, I think it's the 16th they played Pittsburgh, and you started that game, is because I think it was the 20th that Babcock had got fired and let go. So as far as that game,
partly my fault.
I wouldn't go that far, because they were reeling at that time. But that Pittsburgh game, shot into your first NHL game on the ice against like the superstars that Pittsburgh has, and with the state of the Leafs at that time reeling a little bit, I remember watching it thinking, this guy's battling, and you made like so many unbelievable stops, but still the fact that like the score line was very lopsided because of the way the game was played out. How was that first experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, I look back and nothing but good things. I was like you said, like I'm happy that I was able to, play my game and play well, even though no matter what the score says. But I felt like it's something that I can definitely play in the league and belong in and can compete and help the team. So a lot of tough chances, but I guess it's also good that the first game is a start and you get tested hard, and so there's just very, very good memories from the whole thing, and obviously very special, waiting that long to get a debut, something that I never took for granted, or ever sometimes thought might never happen. So just looking back, just all positivity and happy how it all played out.
Awesome. Is the goal at some point, I know we can get into your life in Sweden now and how you're enjoying it there. But it is the goal at some point to perhaps try to make a return to the NHL, or is it just season by season grinding in the SHL right now and seeing where that takes you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been my goal, and I feel like my career has always progressed forward each year, and just that's where I would stop showing up to the rink if my goals weren't in the NHL and with the Stanley Cup. That like the long-term plan. Obviously, coming off my last season in Toronto, I made my debut. Like, I would like to say I earned my debut, which is not because of injuries and getting pulled. So I'm happy about that as well. And then selected to the AHL All-Star game. I feel like, just taking the right steps, and then going to Nashville, and not like just circumstances were what they were, and not being able to play for a full year, and then how the whole season was messed up, the timelines, and free agency would have been so late during the summer, and like I said, I hadn't played any games, and I didn't really know what the teams that were interested in and where the value is, and I had the opportunity to come here, and to get great opportunity, and that was right after the season ended. So obviously the timelines, like the jobs are going to go way faster over here in Europe, and you wait for a week and then it's already filled. So and then I would have waited till free agency, and who knows, be out of a job, like worst case scenario. So I think it was, at the time, it was the perfect opportunity to come here and get back to playing a lot. So, and that worked out perfect, because obviously Sweden I see it as a better league than the American Hockey League. So for my career, it's also a step up from the leagues I've played in. And also last year I played the most games in the league as a goalie. So
yeah, it was, I remember
I looked
it up and I saw 46. I think he played 46 games, and the Swedish Elite League plays about 50 something games.
52. I think
so
47 games.
Wow.
52. So
yeah.
It was just what I needed, and like obviously taking the step to getting more game experience and playing a lot and getting used to it, and obviously was hoping to go back to North America, and was open for offers this off season, but nothing that planned out. So I'm just happy to be back here and kind of build on that. And it was good to, first day I was back here, and it felt like I just left yesterday. So it's something nice to like build on. A lot of the old teammates are here. So not that you're jumping in a completely new situation again. So I'm, just happy that I get to come here and be in a good environment where I was successful, and make the most of it and take more steps towards the NHL.
Nice. As far as off the ice on the media side, I come from a background. I graduated from a media studies program here in Toronto, and I'm working at the league now, doing some digital marketing with our corporate partners and stuff like that. So I know you're very into your media side, and I find that very unique about you. I really like that you film these vlogs and you post them to YouTube, and I love how you get like practices and warm-ups and all that. It shows the consumer and the fan the behind the scenes of what it looks like from the player's point of view, and I think that's awesome. So was that something you were always drawn to? Was that something you just said, what, one day I want to do this? Or did you jump into it and just take it from there? What was that, that start of that curiosity of the media side?
I think I have to thank COVID for this. The one thing I'm thankful for COVID. Yeah. So obviously never would I have expected to do anything like this. And obviously in hockey and as a goalie, like even in Toronto, they were saying like the less attention you bring to yourself, the better. And but obviously that's Toronto for you too.
Yeah, Toronto.
But just going into the bubble with Toronto for the playoffs, and seeing some NBA players post videos from their bubble since they had it a little earlier, and I was like, well, I'm the third guy in the Leafs. Like, I'm not playing here. It's a once in a lifetime thing, and me as a hockey fan, I've been deprived of hockey content for how long it was, you know, almost 6 months, and yeah, I just looked up those guys, what they're doing, and then kind of, I think I was filming on my phone, or my wife ended up sending my old like GoPro 4 with bat like just beat up, and so I was filming on those things and just, you know, made sure the team is okay with that, and they wanted to check all the videos that I'm not breaking any of those COVID rules or anything like that before I post them, and then hit publish and tweeted it out, and got a little bit of help from the NHL and the Maple Leafs on the Twitter side of things that kind of exploded the whole thing. And ever since day one, fans have loved it, and that's the kind of whole thing I like. Why I keep doing it. So, and I enjoy doing it too, especially here in a small town in Sweden, and I got a lot of time in my hands, so it's kind of fun to, like, whether it's vlogs or something else, and my wife is passionate about that stuff as well, so we're kind of doing all these things together, and then also something to look back on too, like when we're tired and grandkids maybe, and, you know, show that like this is what life was like when I was in the NHL, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. I find that you know, I felt like my whole adolescent years and into my young adult years, I've been one of those people that really likes to enjoy the moment and not take videos and photos and have that for myself, because I like being in the moment so much. But as I look back on it now, I'm like, dang, I wish I took a video of that concert or that beach day or that whatever memory. So there's like a balance with it. I'm definitely stringing more towards that now, or even with my own girlfriend, she's like, we got to take more photos, videos, get this stuff, you know, for our own memory. Right.
For sure. Now too, like, because now, like, during the season, like, it's more like it's episodes, and like I have to like keep up, and like then we go on the road, and I'm like stressed out about like what do I have to get, you know, with my camera, not just like, so it's like if I miss out on, like, forget to like morning skate, and like, you know, first part of travel, I forget to film it, I'm like, oh my god, like
I missed that part
out. But but it's been good, because like obviously I'm still like very worried and very like what my teammates think, like what if like an NHL GM sees these, like it's just like very like still like unknown area for me, and I'm not that comfortable with doing that. But it's good that it's successful and fans seem to love it, and I feel like everybody knows by now, so I shouldn't be that worried or hide it that much, because I still think like there's a lot of guys in the team who've never seen my camera, which is kind of how I like to keep it. Very still like film like this, and I hear footsteps, and I'm like tucking it into my pocket quickly, and then I'm later that day I'm posting on every social media platform about them. But so it's different, but it hasn't affected playing or anything like that. I just the next video that's going to come out, I think maybe at the change of this August and September month, is going to be like a day in the life of a game day, and I ended up, you know, filmed everything I did that day, and ended up getting a shutout in the preseason game. So it's not like the filming is going to be a distraction. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to also put through these videos.
Nice. I saw the one that just came out with your daughter's first day of school and all that. That was very like heartwarming and just an awesome video. I thought it was great. Seeing that side of an NHL, or seeing that side of a pro hockey player is great, right? As opposed to just what they're doing every day on the ice. So how do you find, I guess, you know, bringing your family into it is, you know, that aspect of it. How do you enjoy doing that? Does your daughter and your wife and, you know, that sort of thing, are they comfortable in front of the camera? And I know you've really grown Because I've watched the videos from the beginning till now, and even your own personality, I feel like, has bloomed on the camera, and you can tell that you're much more comfortable with it.
My personality is not really for being a YouTube vlogger, but obviously it's the hockey that matters. I like to think, but then it's like, oh, like, does anybody care if I do put like family events on there? But then I get a lot of comments that people really enjoy that too, and it's, you know, like I said earlier, that we can look back on Fox's first day of school when we're in Sweden, like pretty special for her that she got to go to school in Sweden and, you know, kind of see how everything played out. But yeah, obviously my wife, she's got her own YouTube channel. She's filmed some stuff for the vlogs, and she's gonna start posting soon once she gets the hang of the editing. And obviously Fox is the star of the show now and loves it, and
Yeah,
she's too funny, so she's easy to film. Always, like, if I don't have any ideas, I'm just gonna go talk to Fox and see
defer to her.
doing.
Yeah, defer to her. She'll give good content.
Yeah, so it's good that way, and it's good to see that it's more than just the hockey that people want to see.
More on the off the ice personal side. I've recently, like, I got a few ideas in my head in terms of, you know, once I have, you know, some budget for it, but tattoos and that sort of thing, like getting some art done. I know that you have some as well. And like, do you have like a favorite piece, or is it one of those things where you're just more into the art of it or the meaning, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I got a couple. I got my daughter's name. I got my daughter's birthday. I have my date of the NHL debut, and then kind of my half sleeve. What I got going on is kind of just different memories or different things from where I've lived, my career, and, you know, there's a maple leaf for our time in Toronto, and guitar for our time in Nashville. So just little things like that. So I still got to figure out what I'm getting from Sweden and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of, you know, rather than put some silly generic tattoos, I kind of like to have some meaning to them and trying to, you know, make it look good as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like I need to think about it a little more on things that I want, but like you said, I like tying it to specific places and people in my life that I found very important and influential into who I've grown into and to who I keep growing into. So I love that. As far as
it's like where I live, like where we got married and stuff like that, and then I have this stupid cowboy hat on my leg that I did with a couple of my buddies with matching tattoos for Nashville, and so it's like even that has a meaning, but it's not all so serious.
As far as, you know, you bounced around to different places, living in different spots, did you, like, growing up, did you think that you wanted a more, I guess, like, traditional, you want to live in one sort of city, state, province, whatever, for your whole life? Or I guess you obviously knew as a hockey player, you might be bouncing around to different spots, but did you have like any spots circled on your world map that you wanted to visit or perhaps live in growing up?
Yeah, I mean, I think just growing up in Finland, and I had the big US of A just circled out, that'd be a cool place to live, and that's kind of what I was always drawn into. And now we have a house in Minnesota, so I get to kind of live that dream over during the off seasons. And yeah, it's been awesome to live in Toronto, a big city, and obviously hockey crazy city. Like we love that place, and Nashville kind of stole our hearts too. And there's a lot of great people and friends that we have in Nashville. So it was we were thinking about selling the house and just kind of going back to Nashville. But yeah, Minnesota is great. Obviously played college hockey and juniors there. That's where my wife is from. So the weather is same as here in Sweden and Finland, and
you get all 4 seasons.
Yeah. So it's same thing. So it's nothing too crazy, not like Florida or
Yeah.
but and then living in Sweden here, it's just like living in Finland growing up. So for me, it's always kind of been had no issues of where we've lived. So and the families enjoyed it as well.
Awesome. I wanted to quickly touch on before we get you going here, your jersey number. Did you have any ties to specific numbers? I know you wore, I think it was 50 in Toronto for that one game, and it was 73. Is that right, in Nashville?
Yeah, in Nashville. Yeah.
So did you have any ties to numbers growing up? And then you could tell us what number you wear now, and yeah, all of that sort of stuff.
I've had a lot of different numbers, and I think most of them are like going to play junior hockey in Minnesota. I had like 3 options, and like 33 was the best out of them. I was like, okay, Patrick Roy, 33, that's a great number. Played well, so I wanted in college as well, and then I went to Toronto and the Marlies, and Freddie Gaultier had 33, so I got 30 with the Marlies, which is like I don't like 30. It's too generic goalie number. And then my training camp number always with the Leafs were 50. So something that I didn't even get to pick. And then obviously it was my jersey number too. So not much I could do there. Chicago Wolves, I had 31, but that was kind of the same thing. They just gave me a number and showed up the first game, and that's where it was. And then for Nashville, pretty much for the first time got to really pick a number, and I had something special in mind. And obviously 73 is my wife's name is Whitney, and she's got 7 letters on her name, and then Fox is 3. So that was kind of
that's unique right there. I never heard of that.
The reasoning as well. I think it's a cool number, good looking number, higher up too. And at the end of the season, Whitney ended up getting a 73 tattoo on her wrist. And then I signed in Sweden, and they're a traditional team, and they don't do high numbers. So it was the same thing. I got to pick out a couple of different numbers, and 31 was the best out of them. And I was like, I had it in Chicago, and so 3 and 1 kind of looks like a 7 sometimes. So but, didn't get too much of a choice. And this summer I try to ask again, can I do 73? And they're like, no, high numbers. And 37 was taken by one of our new guys coming in, so I was too late on that. But
so another question I had for you, I know Carter Ashton, you play with him over in Europe, and he was once a member of the Leafs organization as well. I wanted a quick touch on maybe some of your funniest teammates, good teammates you've played with. I'm sure you have at all your stops, but just a few that come to mind when I ask that question.
Carter had a pretty crazy experience in Toronto. I think he kind of got stuck on the bench for most of the games, just whatever the situation of the team was at that time. But he's been great for us. But funniest, like there's so many good guys, and then it's rare in hockey to have a bad teammate. But there's guys like obviously Justin Hall. You can hear in Toronto that he's kind of a character, and Ryan Johansson in Nashville is something else. You could just watch him all day, and he's
with that beautiful hair.
He makes the boys laugh. Yeah, it's good. And those are the couple guys that come in mind. And I think we just got new guy for us this year is John Quenneville, who played 45 games I think in the NHL with New Jersey, and he's a pretty vocal guy, so he makes the guys laugh here as well. So he's had a good entry to the team, and he brings a lot of energy, so we enjoy him.
Nice. Going into the season, I know with it almost starting here, how do you guys feel about your chances to succeed this year in the SHL? And what do you think is the ceiling for this team? You guys think you can really make a run at the championship?
Yeah, I think even like looking at last year, I think we were too like up and down. We got hit by injuries pretty hard, and but there are times in the season where we climbed from last to first, and we were the hottest team for a while, and so it's there 100%. And obviously we lost Max Verno, who scored the most goals in the MVP of the league, and but like I said, we got Quenneville, and we added some good defensemen. Like that was the kind of the plan for the off season, and yeah, we got some firepower and skill up front for sure, and then with a couple more pieces in defense, and hopefully I can take it to the next level and just feed off the experience from last season, and kind of build off that. So I think ceiling is high. Obviously, like last year, we were dominating a lot of the games. So I think it just stay healthy and consistent and play to our best, and the cup should be ours. But that's not always how you draw it up. But yeah, I think very confident. We're definitely like fighting for the championship, other than trying to just fight off relegation.
Awesome. Well, I really hope you guys make a deep run and go for it this year. I just wanted to throw it over to you at the very end to close us out here and give us where we can find your content, your wife's content once she starts putting it out, and we'll direct our fans to you guys.
Yeah, I think just search Kaskisuo. That's pretty easy on all platforms, and I share a lot of my wife's stuff, and also you can find her on the YouTube as well. But yeah, everything should be behind my last name, and kind of trying to stay active on all those platforms and create some kind of content that people want to see.
Awesome. Well, Kasimir, I really appreciate you hopping on. It's awesome to see you here and to chat with you here. I'm sure our fans are going to love it, and we'll keep in contact and maybe bring you back again.
Yeah, sounds good. It was fun.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Legendary chat with Kasimir Kaskisuo. Lucas, just coming off that chat, how did it feel? How did it feel to talk to the guy?
It was awesome, man. I mean, like, the guy, he's a little bit more quiet, more reserved guy at first, but once you peel back the layers a bit, you get him going about his experience and his what he loves to do with his YouTube career he's got going on. I mean, truly a pleasure to have him and to speak to him. It's always great when these guys give you their time. They're obviously so busy. He's getting ready for the season in the SHL. So make sure to keep an eye on Kasimir Kaskisuo over in the SHL, because they're going for it this year over there to win the league.
Yeah, and honestly, it's really cool what Kasimir's doing on his YouTube channel. So anyone watching, make sure you go subscribe to his channel. And as Lucas said, keep an eye. Like, unfortunately, I wasn't able to be a part of that interview, but Lucas, man, legendary job. Great work. We're gonna keep it going.
John, we got to keep the guests coming, keep the content coming. I want to get this out there quickly. We are looking into getting the podcast distributed on Spotify, Apple, those sort of places, so it's not just on YouTube. So keep an eye out. We'll get it there. We will get it there. Just give us a bit of time as we get this show rocking and rolling for the season.
Yeah, and then once we do that, all the episodes will be on there, and you can watch it all back and listen back. So thank you guys so much for listening to episode 4. Big time episode. We're rolling here from Lucas, the legend, myself, Hot Take Hockey Podcast. We're going to keep her going throughout the season, so look out for it. Thank you so much. Hit that subscribe, hit that like, hit the notification bell. Leave your thoughts in the comment section. Recommend guests, recommend topics, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. And yeah, we're looking forward to it. Peace. Have a good one. Peace.